Europe's golden visa programs offer a way to have the option to live in Europe, but not the requirement. But for folks who want to actually live in Europe, many people overlook another type of residence permit that I'm going to share with you right now. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. This is Nomad Capitalist, where we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best. And we've talked to you before about golden visa programs. We've covered them here on our channel. We've got a lot of articles on nomadcapitalist.com. A golden visa program, also known as a residence by investment program. These are programs that are in a number of European countries whereby you can go and make some kind of investment, whether it's into a fund or into real estate or into some kind of bank deposit or bonds or other things, and get a residence permit that, generally speaking, allows you to live in that country and, in theory, in greater Europe through the Schengen area without the requirement to do so. In some cases, it leads to citizenship with that minimum physical presence. In other cases, it merely stays a residence for as long as you aren't actually living there. And so people do this as an opportunity to live in Europe. A number of these countries have tax incentives. And again, in some cases, you can work towards one of the world's best passports if you want a great, what we call Tier A citizenship. And so for someone who, let's say, is living in the United States or in Canada, and they're not sure they want to leave, or for someone who wants to live a global lifestyle and they're not ready to commit to, let's say, 6 months a year, this can be a great opportunity to, again, secure that access, potentially get a passport, and potentially give your kids a passport as well if you've got a family. But for folks who actually want to live in Europe, what I often hear is, I have to get a golden visa to live in Europe. I'm often talking to folks who say, oh, I hear the price of Portugal's golden visa, for example, went up. But what I want you to consider is there are other programs out there that many European countries have, which are called financially independent residence programs or self-sufficient residence programs, residence permits for financially independent people. Now, there are pros and cons to the golden visa and to these financially independent residence programs. With these financially independent residence programs, you are essentially paying, as it were, with your time rather than with your money, because rather than investing 500,000 euros in a fund, rather than buying 280,000 or 250,000 euros in real estate, rather than putting 1 million euros in bonds or 2 million euros in REITs, you are merely going and living in the country. Now, what does that come with? It comes with the physical requirement to actually be there. Okay? And so a lot of times people don't want to do that, whether it's moving to Puerto Rico as an American for tax savings or whether it's moving to Europe. People often like flexibility, especially if your residence permit is a plan B. What you also need to consider is when you're spending a good amount of time in these countries, let's call it 6 months, for example, to keep the residence permit active, you may now be in a tax net. And you could be in a tax-friendly country like Portugal, where they have the NHR program, where they're very crypto tax-friendly, but Europe's tax incentives are not as clear-cut as they are in many other countries. It's not just simply come and don't pay anything. There is tax planning required. And so if you're falling into the net, even of a relatively tax-friendly country like Portugal, or an Ireland, which has tax incentives, or an Italy, which has tax incentives, you are still going to have to do your proper tax planning to make sure that you're not going to be paying, extreme rates of tax. And so for someone who's willing to do tax planning, who's willing to choose from the menu of Europe's countries with tax incentives, you can do this as a way to say, hey, I want to live in Europe. I'm going to commit to the appropriate amount of months, let's say 6 again. I'm going to do the tax planning. And rather than investing in those investments, all I need to do is rent an apartment. Maybe I need to open a bank account. And what you generally need to do is show that you have funds. So that could be a monthly amount. It differs by country and it differs by embassy sometimes for each country. But it could be 2,000 euros for a single, 3,000 euros for a couple. Sometimes they want to see that. Sometimes they want to see bank statements for the last 12 months. Sometimes they want to see both. But if you can show that you have 25,000 euros, 48,000 euros, 60,000 euros, and or a couple thousand euros a month in income, then you can qualify for a lot of these programs. And they're not, even though some of them are marketed more as retirement programs, in general, there aren't age limits. Now, the one challenge that we do see is if you're entirely in cryptocurrency, you're going to have some kind of income because these countries really don't want to look at your crypto portfolio. They want to see every month a pension is coming in or some type of other income, okay? And so what that does mean is sometimes there are more documentary challenges. So for example, Portugal has one of these programs. Compared to the golden visa, which you can start applying for no matter where you are, the Portugal self-sufficient program, you have to go and you have to apply in your home country. Now, if you're living in the United States, that's not so difficult. You go to the local embassy. It's going to take longer, perhaps, than getting ready for the golden visa. It's going to be more intense on the ground. There's going to be more documentary stuff you have to do. But again, you're saving a substantial investment in exchange for actually living in the country 6 months a year versus 7 days for the golden visa program. So a little bit more documentation up front may not be the end of the world. And so those are the issues, those are the challenges with these. You are going to have to live there. So that means, again, potential tax residence. It means that other places you want to live may have to take a back seat. It means spending time in your home country may take a back seat. It also may be harder to get citizenship. For example, a country like Greece, which has one of these programs, I generally think has a bad track record of naturalizing people who aren't of Greek ethnicity. And so if you're living in Greece for all these years, you might have a very tax-friendly existence with their new tax incentives. But if you're looking for citizenship, you may not be able to get it. In some cases, you may have a higher language burden in terms of learning the language than someone who's investing in the golden visa program. So if you don't want to learn a language, these programs may be more difficult. And again, the tax planning has to be done. Now, where can you find these programs? Well, you've got a lot of them all over Europe. One is in Andorra. You're looking at a mid-six-figure investment, putting some money in a bond, as well as making some kind of investment in a business or in real estate. You're going to commit to spend 90 days a year there. That's one of the more flexible programs, both in terms of generally low taxes, both in terms of minimal physical presence. Now, Andorra, it's going to be a very difficult citizenship to get. So, as is often the case, very tax-friendly country, at least by European standards, minimal physical presence. They're going to give that to you. Citizenship is going to be difficult. Austria has a program, definitely more expensive, higher standards, higher legal fees. Austria is a place, obviously some people have concerns about right now, but you can go and live there, and this is a very high standard. Now, Austria, you can work towards citizenship, but there's no dual for this track. You would have to learn German. So, if you want that Austrian lifestyle, you can get that. But again, you're going to be required to stay there. You're going to be required to have, pay taxes. They don't really have a lot of tax incentives in Austria, so it's going to be a program where you get to live there, but you don't have the tax incentive. Switzerland is a program, and as you probably know, Switzerland has a pretty straightforward tax regime where, hey, we'll let you live here, and let's figure out how much tax you've got to pay. We're talking hundreds of thousands, potentially even more in Swiss francs every year. Housing is expensive, but for someone who wants the best of the best, Switzerland, again, a difficult passport to obtain, but they're going to let you live there. They're not going to require quite as much physical presence as some of the other programs, so that's a pro. But you're going to be committing to one of the highest tax bills of any program of its nature in Europe. But that gives you the freedom to live in Switzerland, which of course, you have different languages spoken there, many different interesting parts of Switzerland. Spain is a program. Seems pretty flexible. Problem is Spain has high taxes. Even if you look at the alleged tax incentive that they have there, it's a pretty wimpy tax incentive. Spain is a relatively long citizenship to get at 10 years, which is why I don't particularly like their golden visa either. So Spain is a place that I often ignore. As much as I know people like to live there, I don't think Spain offers a lot of value. Portugal does offer a lot of value because you have a tax incentive that is a sort of Swiss cheese of tax incentives, but it can work for many people. You're going to spend 6 months a year there, I would think, to cover yourself. And citizenship is a bit more easily attainable with some basic Portuguese. So Portugal might be one that is interesting, and a lot of people are going to Portugal through this program. Greece is one that is not quite as widely talked about. Greece has a couple different tax incentives now, just for average earners as well as for pensioners. It's a kind of a different kind of lifestyle, but also, obviously very Mediterranean lifestyle. The biggest concern about Greece for many years was the taxes are insane. And so under this regime, you can simply move there. You show you have some money in the bank. You show you have some income. And you can simply rent a property. If you don't want to participate in Greece's or Portugal's or Spain's golden visa programs, you can get in without really much investment at all. Just show your income. Another country that has a program like this is Ireland, with what they call the Stamp Zero program. Again, a lot of tax planning needed to go to Ireland. But if you want to live in an English-speaking country, very highly developed country in Europe, Ireland has that program, pitched as a retirement program, but not really necessarily only for retirees. You're going to have to show about 60,000 euros that you have access to. Italy also has a program. They've got a tax incentive as well. So these are all the countries that you can consider if you're actually looking to move and stay in Europe and stay in this particular country, develop ties, pay some kind of tax. For some people, it's very interesting because they want to leave their home country. They want to go somewhere new. Perhaps they want a softer landing. They're not ready to go to some of the countries that we talk about that are a bit more exotic. They want to go to a country like a Switzerland where they have a lot of the conveniences, a lot of the comforts, and they're willing to pay for it. And in some of these countries, like a Portugal, like in Ireland, you could work towards citizenship, these are some of the best passports in the world. And so, even though you're going to pay something, both with time and with probably some taxes, even if it's a reduced amount of taxes, it might be a nice soft landing for people who are coming from an environment where, again, they're living in a developed place, they're paying a high amount of tax, they can move to a similar developed place, pay a lesser amount of tax, change their life, have some flexibility to travel from this destination even while they spend a substantial amount of time there, and potentially work towards citizenship. This could be a soft landing for folks. It can also be an opportunity to live in Europe without investing large sums of money. So don't think you have to do a golden visa. People who want flexibility, the golden visa often makes a lot more sense. But if you're starting off with a lesser amount of money, or again, you want access to a place like Switzerland, which doesn't have a golden visa per se, this is another option that you can consider. Don't stop now. We've got well over 1,000 more videos here on YouTube for you to watch and learn how to go where you're treated best. And if you want to work with Nomad Capitalists personally, go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply, learn about our unique, tried and true process, garnered over years of experience, and learn how you can become our client.